If you're anything like me, you've probably found yourself nodding along while someone else is talking, pretending to listen while you're really just waiting for your turn to speak again. We live in a culture that often values what we call soft skills like charisma and charm over hard skills like coding or calculus. This means that many of us are naturally better at appearing to listen than we are at actually listening. But active listening is an essential skill. And in this video, I want to make the case for why it's so important. I also want to share some tips about how to do it well. When we listen actively to other people, we learn more, we build stronger relationships, and we even process our thoughts more deeply. It can be easy to think of listening as passive and therefore less valuable than speaking. But in fact, studies show that listening is actually more mentally taxing than talking since it requires us to process both verbal and nonverbal information simultaneously. In order to do it well, we need to draw on our working memory to organize all those thoughts and sounds and images and body language. So no, listening is not just something that we do while we're waiting for our turn to talk. It's an active, engaging, and vital part of any interaction. But why should we care? Why should we make an effort to listen actively rather than just waiting for our turn to speak? Well, there are many reasons, but I want to highlight three: deeper understanding, better critical thinking, and more meaningful conversations. First, active listening leads to deeper understanding. When we're young, we tend to think of ourselves as the main character in a movie. We're the protagonist with our own thoughts and feelings driving the plot. Everyone else in our lives plays a supporting role, and their lines and actions are there simply to support our storyline. This is a natural way to view the world, especially when we're still figuring out who we are and how we got here. But as we mature, we realize that every person we meet has their own rich inner world, their own story with them as the main character. Each person sees the world through the lens of their own experiences, emotions, memories, hopes, and dreams. Active listening helps us to see the world from other people's perspectives, and in doing so, it helps us to understand them better. But it also helps us to understand ourselves better too. I'll never forget the first time I heard someone else describe my condition. I had been diagnosed with dyslexia as a child, but no one ever told me what it meant or how it affected me. All I knew was that I struggled with spelling and reading out loud. One day in college, I was having lunch with a friend from high school who happened to be studying education. As we were catching up, I mentioned my diagnosis, and she stopped, looked at me, and said, "Oh, so you're like me." Confused, I asked her what she meant. She explained that she also had dyslexia and that she had learned to compensate for her challenges by using visual aids and mnemonic devices. I remember feeling shocked and validated at the same time. I realized that I wasn't alone and that my struggles didn't make me weird or defective. They just meant that I needed to learn and teach in different ways. To this day, knowing that other people face similar challenges has helped me to stay motivated and positive. Active listening can help you have similar eye-opening experiences. It can help you to see new perspectives, consider alternative explanations, and challenge your own beliefs. Second, active listening leads to better critical thinking. When we're young, we tend to think that we already know everything. Our parents, teachers, friends, they've all made mistakes and we're much smarter than them. Now, obviously, this isn't true. If it were, then kids would be running the government and curing diseases instead of the other way around. But even as we get older, we tend to think that we've already heard enough. We close our minds to new ideas and stop considering alternative perspectives. We become less flexible and adaptable in our thinking, which is a big problem because we live in a rapidly changing world. We need to be able to integrate new information into our existing knowledge and change our beliefs when necessary. Active listening can help us to do that because it helps us to hear things from other people's perspectives. It forces us to organize our thoughts and articulate our reasoning clearly, and it pushes us to reconsider our assumptions and biases. An excellent example of this comes from two friends of mine, Ben and Will. Both are successful entrepreneurs and both are avid learners. The difference between them is that Ben listens actively while Will pretends to listen. When Ben meets someone new, he asks lots of questions and he tries to see the world from their perspective. He listens to understand, not to respond. As a result, he's able to learn new things quickly and adapt his plans accordingly. For example, after meeting with a potential investor, he might take some time to reflect on her advice and feedback before making any decisions. On the other hand, Will tends to think that he already knows everything. He doesn't bother to ask follow-up questions or consider alternative perspectives. He just waits for his turn to talk again. As a result, he often misses out on important details and makes avoidable mistakes. For example, he might ignore a customer's complaint or brush aside an employee's suggestion. In the long run, this has cost him dearly and has limited his growth as an entrepreneur and as a person. Third, active listening leads to more meaningful conversations. Think back to the last time you had a deep, engaging conversation with someone. How did it feel? What do you remember about it? Chances are it wasn't a small talk or polite chit-chat. It was a conversation about something that mattered to you, something that made you think and feel more deeply. These kinds of conversations are special. They help us to connect with other people on a deeper level. They help us to grow as individuals, and they help us to make sense of our experiences. Active listening is essential for creating these kinds of meaningful conversations. When we listen actively, we show other people that we care about them and what they have to say. We signal that we're open to learning from them and that we value their input. This creates a safe space for them to share their thoughts and feelings, and that in turn leads to more authentic and meaningful conversations. There are many ways to improve your active listening skills. Here are just a few. Paraphrase to make sure that you understand the other person. Ask clarifying questions to dig deeper and explore ideas further. Summarize key points to check your understanding and to show that you're paying attention. And empathize by acknowledging the other person's feelings and perspectives. There are also some habits that can hinder our ability to listen actively. Here are 3. Interrupting, judging, and focusing only on the words someone says rather than also paying attention to their body language. By being aware of these tendencies, we can start to correct them. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions, active listening can seem like a daunting task. It requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to confront our own biases. But the benefits of doing so are immense. We learn more, we connect more deeply, and we think better. At its core, active listening is about showing up for others and being present in the conversation. It's about putting aside our own distractions and focusing on understanding the other person's perspective. It's not always easy, but it's always worthwhile. Thank you for watching and for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you've learned something new. If you have, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, you can do so here. Thank you for listening and I will see you next time.